collective scale is directly connected with the personality. So when in a situation of perpetrator and victim, let's take it down to the individual, because the collective is an accumulation of many individuals. So you've got the perpetrator and the victim, and you have the meeting point of cruelty. So everybody is caught in that energy of the cruelty, the perpetrators and the victims. That energy of cruelty is denied by everybody. It's not mine, shadow. Yeah. So the victim is saying, you know, this horror of the rape, the cruelty, the abuse, this pure evil that I've experienced while being raped. This is not mine. This belongs to the rapist. Yeah. The rapist is trying to release that horror inside himself by acting out. He's trying to get rid of it from himself by acting out on his victim. So he's also saying it's not mine, it's causing the rape. Nobody's taking responsibility for the horror of cruelty. So that horror of cruelty is in perpetrators and victims epigenetically alike. The abuser is epigenetically tagged inside every Israeli cell. They're looking for it. They're looking for the situation on the outside, just like the perpetrators are as well, by creating gargamels and stuff, in order to release this horror through awareness, to heal it, to let it be, let it breathe, to get to the core of the pure horror, which is pure agony, suffering, violation, collective. Yeah. It's so important, because as long as the victim believes that this experience, the energetic content of this experience belongs with the perpetrator, the victim will never be free. He will never stand. Because the monster is always out there. It's always because of. The whole world's against me. The victim his world will contract in disempowerment, which will make him feel more of the victim, because he's giving all the power to the outside, to the point of paranoia. Total paranoia.
Yeah, but the paranoid can be right.
Let me, and this is a very emotional subject for me, and I'm going to show something of myself in this, which is more as, it's not a teacher, this is the person, Bart, who's speaking, and this is, I'm almost crying because of this. My grandmother was Jewish. Everybody died except her in the Second World War because of discrimination, anti-Semitism, whatever you call it. So through this, my father married a non-Jewish woman. I'm not Jewish, but still, through this I had always kind of this, and my father too. When I was born, I got a couple of trees here in Israel. There's this connection, you know, trees. He bought a couple of trees in Israel when I was born, and you know the certificates are still somewhere. You know, and kind of, you know, this bond with Israel for my father has always been kind of important as a promise of a country where there would be no discrimination, where there would be equality. The incredible difficulty for me moving into Israel and to see that Jewish people among themselves, among each other, are playing out exactly the same kind of tribalism, which is in my eyes the cause of anti-Semitism, is really, really painful. So for me, what is really important is to first to look inside before we look outside. And my first reaction is when I hear people talk here about how bad it is in Europe and how bad it is here and how bad it is there. It's like it's thrown away abroad what is happening here. And I think that's really, really painful, because part of creating Israel as a country again was there to kind of to find union. When we look to the Jewish religion in itself is a religion which is all about union, one God. When you look back, it's about union, equality.
No equality among women. Forget it.
Exactly, but that's where it starts. You know, that's when it starts. You know, when I studied philosophy, the side of psychology. So, you know, one very important Dutch philosopher, and he's talking about culture and about the development of culture. For his, or how he measures culture, is how people are treating their females. And it's a lack of culture in a way. It's a lack of really understanding that people are different, but at the same time they're equal. They have equal rights. And so we're not there as a world. So you see basically this discrimination, you see it flare up, like right now in the United States. You know, Trump coming forward. Nothing about the politics of Trump, but at the same time what you see is that a lot of his followers are against the black American population, are strongly against everybody who is not white in the basis. They don't belong. So this is not a good thing. This polarization is not a good thing. The other side, what you see also in Israel, and Israel is as much part as the world the world is part of Israel, I think, is that, you know, you see more and more mixed marriages. So in the end there will not
Mixed of what?
marriages.
What kind of mixed?
And somebody whose ancestors are coming from Poland is marrying somebody whose ancestors are coming from Morocco, and they marry their children.
Jewish mixed, yeah.
Jewish mixed is one example.
Yeah.
Other
But
mixed
not
is
among the religious.
what?
Not among the religious.
Yes, that's
the
true.
religious keep it very strict.
No, that's not true.
Well, only if they have problems genetically.
That's not true.
No?
No.
Oh,
That's
okay.
they are rumor.
It's about that you want. Let's not go there.
Yeah, yeah.
It's mixing everywhere. So in the end, what I hope is that we have people who all look alike, who have, and already that's there when you do genetic investigation. You know, you look to the genes and what is the background of people. What you see is that from all around the world, there are influences. We are already mixed. Maybe we need to be mixed a little bit more.
But look at Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia was mixed, and they were saying the war goes inside the bedroom, in the bed.
Yeah.
They were mixing like crazy, the Croats and the Serbs, and what did it help? It didn't.
We'll see.
Yeah.
You know, it's not right there. We are not free enough of the identification with the person to kind of, and with all the pain of inferiority and superiority, which is there as well, which is making us free enough to see that we are all human. It's the same human mistakes and the same human effort we're doing to make the best of our lives any way we can.
So what's happening right now in the room is that when we begin doing this work, well, like we have been doing for the past 3 days, we're working directly with giving space to the allowance of the energetic material, the feeling substance of the separate self. And the separate self is alive. This energetic material is alive. It's living pain. Living pain may be caught for generations, but it's alive. It's got vitality in it. So when we touch the energetic substance of the separate self, it screams. It bites back. It begins to rattle. So there's a part of it which we're conscious of. Oh, I have a shadow here, and I'm getting these feelings which are old and familiar pains and all of this. And there's a part which is unconscious. The part which is unconscious is very hard for us to contain right now. So what we tend to do then, in an act of program genius or non-genius, is to then say, this is because of the world.
Because of that?
The world. So I'm not a separate self, but the world is anti-Semitic. The world is tribalistic. And we begin to make separations between peoples and generalizations. And in this, we give up. messing with our own separate self, because it's hopeless, isn't it? Because the world is full of tribalism, it's full of cruelty, it's dark, it's condemned, it's destroying itself anyway, and who am I? Who am I? That's the question when you begin to lose a separate self. Who the hell am I then? You know, when you begin to lose the sense of personality. Whole empires are built on this basis, out of woundedness. Whole conquests are made, whole wars are fought out of that woundedness. The only way we can move forward collectively is through the heart of the individual. It's every one of those, like Martin Luther King, Thich Nhat Hanh, whoever, every one, Gandhi, every one of those ones who has the courage to allow his own direct, intimate experience of separation is taking the most profound human responsibility possible. Say that last sentence again, please. The intimate pain of their own sense of separation is taking human responsibility, not just for their own separate self, because it's not separate, but for the collective. Part of our evolution right now is an evolution in which we grow up from kindergarten and begin to take true responsibility for our thoughts, feelings, ideas, for what we create. It's not because of Donald Trump. It's because of us, our experience of horror, and our refusal to experience it.
To allow our own intimate, separate self of suffering. Did I? Okay.
Yeah. And I just say it because it's a pattern. You'll recognize this when you work with people, or when you're in a process with people, or in ourselves. It can be recognized. This escape valve into generalizations. Oh, Israelis are all like this. Oh, well, in France they're like this. It's a kind of way to release the steam of what's not yet conscious enough to be. It hasn't passed the threshold of consciousness, and because we're not able to contain it yet. The depth of the pain, the depth of the direct experience of suffering which is held there. Men are like this, women are like this. When we're able to begin contacting the purer aspects of pain inside ourselves, there's an incredible sense of maturity or adulthood, and a relaxation of the whole system. And that's kind of the feeling of true responsibility. And it's not responsibility for an object. It's standing almost like a statesman, as responsible energetically. It's a centering movement. It brings you into center in a way that nobody has what to say about the right to exist here in freedom. Even though we're surrounded by rivers of suffering in all directions. It's a flip around the other way. You know, we don't get to fix the rivers of suffering by diving into them and drowning in suffering. We get to fix them by moving to the depth of allowance of the rivers and being there as they move, letting them move in peace. So to say it a different way, our direction is always in a way to find to find peace within our worst nightmare. And that's huge, if you think about it. If there's one person who can, and Elie Wiesel, the Holocaust survivor, I met him, he was very close to this, who can sit in peace with the horrors of the Holocaust without losing his connection to peace, without its meaning that he says it's right or wrong or this or that or have to do this or have to do that. That energy of peace, to be able to contain it, is absolutely huge. And that's the same whether it's collective or whether it's individual, because for every preoccupation, for example, with Holocaust, we will find that what we're talking about is an inner Holocaust as well, a private Holocaust, a trauma which is Holocaust-like, even if it's nothing to do with Auschwitz, you know. Boys from Lebanon come back and maybe their whole unit's been exploded. That's like a Holocaust experience. That's the kind of experiences that individually make up the atmosphere of the Shoah. Multiple grief processes, violent death, witnessing murder. So that atmosphere is still here in our boys. being totally bewildered as to who is victim and who is abuser and who is right and who is wrong, and having to follow orders from an outside authority and being submitted into that, but not yet knowing any more who you are through pure trauma. These are those same atmospheres. They're not even historic. So we have this idea in our mind of a separate self, like I'm a person, which, as we said before, tends to show up when we're most in trouble, when we get a rejection, when we come into some kind of fearful situation, or we have a painful memory. That's when we start to build the concept of who we are as a person. To imagine ourselves as we were, as we have been, as our role in the story, and to imagine how we would like to be in the future. This is still mental. The imagination is a way to give form to energies which are overpowering us. So the imagination gives a picture of ourselves, which makes it containable, because a form is always less scary and less threatening than something which seems to be like rejection filling the skies and the universe. So we have a form, and then we can we can tweak the form in our imagination in such a way that maybe we'll be safer, or more fulfilled, or we'll finally have peace. It's one part of imagination. Imagination can do other things too, which can be in freedom and creativity, but that's one part of how imagination gets used in the human mind. But again, what we're working on is getting beneath that to the causal layer of our thoughts and imaginations, which is what we're feeling in real time. And these feelings and emotions, they are just as, toxic gas, liquid, wine, are substances. They're not physical, hard substances, but they're fluid substances. Also these feelings, it's substantial, it's energy that we work with. So when we worked yesterday with the shadow work, it is possible to feel a different density in what would be classically seen as empty space. You can feel a difference, we can feel it within ourselves. A heaviness of heart. Part of our language reflects that direct experience of the physical nature of thoughts and feelings. So, energetically seen, the thought of the separate self, the belief in separation, the belief that I am separate from the universe, from the world, from other people, from my family, from my ancestors, these beliefs, they have an energetic, substantial presence beneath the mind as living energy. There's an energetic separate self. And what's it made of? It's made of substances which we could name as different kinds of suffering. For example, the suffering of guilt. The suffering of guilt depends on the belief in a separate self. It's all about separation, and it separates us. So we can inherit guilt energetically, and this births the idea of a separate self. The vibration of guilt that comes with our cells, that we're born with, all of us are born with vibrations of guilt, because humanity is condemned. We're in this cycle collectively, that the world is bad, and we have to fix it, because we did something wrong, we ate the apple. It's a collective complex, in a way, around guilt. So this substance, that feeling of guilt, is birthing the idea and the belief in the mind of the separate self. And why is guilt about separation? Because it's because of me. Something out there is wrong, and it's my fault. Or I'm wrong, and that's making the world bad. There's a separation. There's a doing. There's a subject and an object. There's a separation in the energy, and the energy by itself, regardless of what the rationality of guilt is, it really doesn't matter. Guilt is very, very irrational. The energy itself is creating a separation because it closes the heart. If I believe that I am bad, I did something terrible, if I feel that I'm bad, that there's some poison here that can hurt others, that I've done bad, which means I'm bad, that's the next stage, then how can I really relax and let myself be natural? You know, even people can come to a place where it feels like if they really allow themselves to love another person, that person will die. It will kill them. Their love is too dangerous. If they really allow themselves to be free and natural without interfering with the mind, they're going to hurt everybody. Or they will get accused and persecuted and condemned. Suddenly. I use guilt as an example, but there are many. Jealousy. And jealousy is the other has what I should have, or I could lose what I have because of jealousy. Because others are jealous towards. It's a very, very, very difficult energy to contain. Doesn't matter who's who. You take out the separate self and you just got the energy of jealousy. It's like almost close to evil. But when you can allow it and let it purify, it falls through this kind of floor of insecurity into this sheer pain. Pure, pure pain.
And fear.
It falls through the fear to pure pain. Of course, we're afraid of jealousy. We're insecure because we're jealous. We're jealous because we're insecure. This is all the energetic substances of separation. Yours and mine. My person, which is a thing, separate self, is inferior to the other person. Or my person is unseen, the other person is seen. It's all moving, creating these illusions in separation between ourselves and the universe. And of course, when we're working, and this can be interesting to watch, when we're working on the separate self, with meditations on the energy of separation, the energetic contractions of the separate self, or the contractions within the personality begins to dissolve, and it's a whole hybrid, it's a whole network held together in a kind of energetic form, the human psyche. So as it begins to appear that this is not fixed, not absolute, not who we are.
The personality.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this contraction of jealousy can come forward very, very, very strongly because it's failing. The personality is failing. And it comes together with idolatry. So what's idolatry? Which is, from Mount Sinai and in the Ten Commandments, this is a major no-no, idolatry. So what is idolatry? It's taking the person as godlike. So the person begins to lose its godlike status as the absolute endpoint of who we are. And the scream of jealousy, it loses its position as idol, our own idol, ourself. And it comes with this scream of jealousy after that, the pain of it. And maybe we don't call it jealousy, but the pain of like not being that idol, even if it's a future idol which we're going to become.
And even if it's an idol that there's actually a negative relationship to.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
The ultimate victim, look at Jesus. The ultimate... the personality doesn't actually... The drive for the personality to keep forming its suffering, it doesn't discriminate between good and bad. We can be the greatest, worst sufferer on earth. That's better than not being anybody at all, from the perspective of the separate self. I'd rather be anybody than nobody at all. And often what you'll see in workshops and stuff is then there's an idolification towards the teacher or towards anybody who can be idolized in the outside,
Sure.
and a jealousy arising around that.
Sure.
Because somebody's got to have the separate self. The boundaries all go down, everything becomes fluid and kind of amorphous, and it has to be somewhere, the idol. So in the light of Mount Sinai, if we take it biblically, of Moshe coming down with the 10 Commandments, the idolatry became, and jealousy arose around the golden calf. Something has to be a thing. This spiritual experience is uncontainable of infinite light and love and benevolence.
Something has to be a thing, either to hate or to love or to
exactly. So this is the kind of evolution we're in, beyond the absolute belief in personhood. And again, like we said yesterday about these great walls of fear, and then behind the wall of fear of our worst nightmare, when we actually move through the fear, we find a little mouse or a piece of string. It's a bit like that with the personality. It never did exist in the first place. Sometimes when people have a big shift out of the personality, they just begin to laugh their socks off. They become very, 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 very amused by the absurdity of ever having believed themselves to be this personality, when there's an energetic freedom opening up. It's really not so terrible to get beyond it, because also most of the time we are beyond it, it's just the mind's not registering it. We're not all the time in the mind. Just when the mind checks in, it says, where's my person? But most of the time, you know, we're driving, we're shopping, we're living, we're together, we're happy, we're sleeping, we're shitting, whatever. There's not a person doing that. So the person only shows up when the mind awakens and reflects, which is a fear response.
And so if it's not a person doing that, which I get, then what is it that's doing that?
Life is doing that.
Okay. Through this particular form, embodied in this particular body.
As part of this particular body, which is the planet. This particular body, which is people. And systems and patterns. Also, the body is not separable.
Exactly.